According to a recent survey, nearly 2/3 of Americans say they don't believe they'll ever be able to retire. 2/3. If you're in that group, I want you to stay right here because today we're going to talk about some people that we've worked with over the years that felt exactly like that. And the good news is they're all retired, right? So let's talk through this today, Mitch. I feel like this has become a real issue for folks. We never used to hear, 25 years ago when I started this business, I never used to hear it the way that I do today. And I think that has a lot to do with the pandemic, and that kind of took a lot of people out of their momentum when it comes to this and made them feel like a lot of people, I feel like, needed to kind of dip into their savings and needed to kind of hit the reset button and had a lot of momentum going into like 2019, 2020, and then felt like they lost a lot of their momentum. And because of that, I think that created some real feelings of falling behind, not being able to save like they used to. A lot of people, it feels like, just kind of gave up.
That's right, Stewart. It's been a tough few years for a lot, and there's a lot of different reasons. I think the pandemic has a lot to do with it, and people came out of that sort of time into a very different job market. And we've seen a lot of things change over the last few years. There's something interesting I was reading about the other day. We've seen this is the highest rate of pre-59.5 401k withdrawals we've had in a long time. So that shows that people are having to dip into those retirement savings early. We've seen the housing market struggle right now. We've seen inflation, highest it's been in a while. There's a lot of factors that I think are causing this, and that's why I think it's so important to talk today, because 2/3 of people is a lot, man.
Yeah, I personally kind of take offense to that, being a retirement planner myself. And so that feels very personal for me when someone comes and sits and tells me, hey, and not by choice, but I'm just going to work forever.
Yep.
The truth of the matter is you can retire. Yeah. There's ways to hit the reset button, reapproach this thing from a little different angle. And the biggest thing that I've learned is that in retirement, it's not necessarily about assets and investments. It's more about income.
Absolutely.
And when it comes to income, it's not what you make, it's what you get to keep.
Right.
And what I would say to folks is there are some real strategies and real things that you can really stay focused on that are going to make the difference between that reality of actually being able to retire and not being able to retire. And we're going to talk about it. What these examples that we're going to walk through show you is that in retirement, your overhead is huge. What does it cost you to maintain your lifestyle on a monthly basis all in? And we have this conversation so much with folks because really that's what it comes down to, Mitch. We have folks that come in that literally could live off of $2,000 a month.
Yep.
And we have folks that come in and could not survive off of less than $15,000 a month.
Absolutely.
And I think it comes down to small things that you can do as you get closer to that, the magic time of having the option. And we don't even really talk about retirement in the same way we used to, but having the option to not have to work anymore. And a lot of people, that's easier for them to kind of grasp and put their arms around is, when would you like to have the option to not have to work anymore? We've had a lot of folks say to me, and I've had a gentleman say it not too long ago, like, I'm going to work till I die by choice.
Right.
I'm going to work because, and his reasoning was because my father retired and reluctantly retired and was passed away within like 6 months. And so he had firmly planted this seed in his head that once you retire, that's a fast track to passing away. And we see that a lot too. And I think the key to that is like, how you go about your retirement.
Yeah.
You can't just sit around and watch reruns of Matlock, and you have to really have a real life built for yourself that is meaningful outside of work. And we've talked about that so many times. But let's walk through some of these examples, and let's try to give people a good idea of some different real life examples of what retirement looked like for other folks. So years back, we worked with Maria, and Maria spent 35 years in food service as waitress, hostessing. She eventually worked her way up to being a shift supervisor at a diner. She loved work and she loved her regulars, but she never had access to a 401k or some workplace savings plan where she could save. She basically existed off of tips, and her employer never offered her any benefits. So she figured retirement was just something that happened to other people, right? She literally felt like that just was out of her reach and not something that she would ever be able to do herself. But it just by chance at age 48, she came across a customer who was a financial planner, and he left his business card for her. Wasn't us, but we came into contact with her later, and just kind of on a whim, she made an appointment. And, this is a great story because that appointment changed the trajectory of her life. And we say all the time that we've seen that happen, and that's happened with our firm more times than I can count over the last 25 years. I have tons of clients who've worked with me for 20 plus years who would tell you flat out, if they weren't working with me, they'd be living a different life now. I'm proud to say that. Like, we have changed lives for the better. But, the planner showed her two things that changed everything. The first thing was she taught her what a Roth IRA is. And because Maria's income was low, she paid very little in taxes. That made a Roth IRA, where contributions go in after tax but grow and come out completely tax-free, almost perfectly suited for her and her situation. And at $32,000 a year, she was in a 12% tax bracket and never had to pay taxes on that money again, right? We see this all the time is people don't, for whatever reason, they don't really understand Social Security.
Yeah.
A lot of people are really surprised to find out that they are going to get a pretty substantial income. As long as you've worked enough in this country and paid into the system, you're going to get a pretty substantial income for the rest of your life that is adjusted for inflation over time. And we hear people all the time when they'll blow that off.
Yeah, like, I'm not going to get much.
I can't count on that. The government's underfunded. There's all these issues. And what if the country just falls apart tomorrow? All of that is a possibility.
Yeah.
I mean, look, this grand experiment that we've been doing for 250 years now is just that.
It is.
And it's the first country that, we've ever had just pure democracy for this amount of time. And
Yeah.
I mean, think about it. Going back in history, every, country, every region, every whatever you want to call it, has been ruled by either, some sort of king, some sort of oligarch, some kind of, absolute ruler, so to speak.
Family.
And so, this was a huge departure from all of that, where, different, branches of government were put into place to keep checks and balances on each other. And, for the most part, it's worked pretty well for the last 250 years. But again, we could wake up tomorrow and that could change.
There's
And
problems. There's certainly, everyone will point to the debt and all these different things, but the truth is, guys, every country's in debt. We have the most, but we also produce the most. We have the highest GDP. China's second, but we produce the most for the world. We produce the most, production. We have the highest GDP. We have all of this. So it's an experiment and it's different, but it's working, right? You could just have this idea that everything's going to fall apart, but we can't plan like that, right? We have to plan for different outcomes, but we can't plan for just everything to break, right? So the country's working, and these, Social Security is underfunded. These things are problems that we're going to have to address for sure, but every country has problems, right? There's always something to address. So we got to focus on the information that we have, the outcomes that are within a reasonable range, and focus on how we can optimize for, this retirement that we're looking at. Yeah.
Getting back to Maria here.
Yeah.
So Maria was able to start at this advisor's recommendation, start to put some money away into a Roth IRA. She was able to really kind of optimize her Social Security and really get her arms around what kind of income that was going to provide for her. And even starting at 48, Maria contributed about $350 a month or $4,200 a year for 15 years until she reached age 63. And averaging about 6% annual growth, her account grew to about $103,000. And then Social Security, which at her full retirement age of waiting till age 67, she received the full projected benefit. So the other thing that Maria did, which was very smart, she decided that it made more sense for her to leave a more high tax, expensive cost of living area once she retired and move to a lower cost area where things were a little more affordable and the cost of living was easier to handle. So at retirement, she moved about 90 miles away. Her rent dropped from $1,250 to $825, about saving her about $5,100 a year. Her Social Security was $1,847 a month. With all of those things in place, with $103,000 in the Roth, the $1,847 in Social Security, really what that worked out was that Roth produced about $430 a month, sustainable, only a 5% withdrawal on that Roth, which is something that she should be able to continue for the rest of her life and not erode her principal. Her total monthly income came in at about $2,277 a month. And when she looked at her expenses and she really kept it very reasonable as far as and didn't spend more than she should, she got her expenses down to just over $2,000 a month, which left her a comfortable, couple $100 a month surplus.
Yeah. And
she was able to retire comfortably off of that. And again, what this story illustrates is it's not necessarily how much you have, it's what you need.
Yeah.
And that is so critical for people to understand. Now, all of these people who are feeling, really depressed when they start thinking about retirement and really feeling like there's just no way it's going to happen. I'm going to have to work till I'm in my 70s. A lot of times that's just not reality. And, a lot of times when these people dig in and start looking at what they're spending money on, what they find is that they can easily create a monthly surplus and not spend everything that's coming in every month if they were just to buckle down and get realistic about what's going on.